So,
Good afternoon. Welcome to Committee of the Whole for Tuesday, May 6th. First up, we have roll call. Kim, we have roll call, please.
Thank you, Council President. Council President Kaur.
Here.
Councilmember Boyce.
Here.
Councilmember Boyd.
Here.
Councilmember Fincher.
here.
Councilmember Larmer. Councilmember Michaud.
Here.
Councilmember Troutner.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Next up, we have agenda approval. Any changes to the agenda? If none, may I have a motion, please?
So move. Second.
Motion and second. Any questions? Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you so much. Okay, next up, approval of minutes for April 15, 2025.
So move, Madam President.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you so much. Next up, payment of bills.
So move, Madam President.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you so much. Next up, we have Economic and Community Development. Councilmember Boyd.
Thank you, Madam President. So we're here to talk about the resolution number 2087, creating an alternative permit fee for some streets cutting and authorizing. And we have Matt Gilbert, who's going to be presenting.
Thank you, council members. I am here to talk about something kind of a little bit in the weeds, but it's really to support the expansion of fiber networks in Kent. As you're aware, there are several new companies that are providing alternatives for internet connection to businesses and residents in the city. What we're finding with these new companies is that they are bringing new methods of installing infrastructure compared to what we've seen historically. Our fee structure for the permitting of this work is designed to pay for staff time, for processing permits, for inspecting work, and such. So we make certain assumptions about the types of work and how long staff will take to do our side, to check for regulatory compliance and make sure things get put back together properly. But with the new technology, we're seeing that there's different impacts and that our fees are really not appropriate to those to the new methods. So, oh, that's really small. I'm sorry. I hope you have this in front of you. But what we're asking for is that you approve this resolution that will give us some flexibility to charge more appropriate permit fees to the fiber networks, fiber providers who use these new construction types. Basically, I'll give you one example. We've been working with Easy Fiber. Instead of cutting the street open and laying their fiber under the road like many other utilities might, they are using they go into the soft surface, they call it, the yards and the shoulder areas where they bore underneath with a boring machine, and then they run the fiber through that new tunnel. So really, the disturbance to the city's sidewalks and streets is minimized. That means less work for everybody. So we want the ability to charge less money because of that. And so this resolution will give the Chief Administrative Officer discretion to apply alternative fees to these new types of work. What we would then anticipate is once we understand what the fees should be through some experience, we'll come back at the end of the year with a revised fee structure that captures this. But we want to do it in a fair and kind of empirical way. So with that, I'll just ask you, I recommend you approve this resolution so we can talk about it at council later this evening.
Okay, thank you, Matt. I thank Council Member Fincher.
Thank you. It mentioned in-kind contributions, that they can make in-kind contributions. What are some examples of that?
Oh, so that would be, yeah, that's a type of, it's an option there where if there were an opportunity for a provider to negotiate with the city to use like existing infrastructure to run their fibers, that could also be an option for paying for some of the time.
So it's not that we're going to get an extra street light or anything?
I wouldn't anticipate that.
Okay, thank you, Brenda. Sandra?
Oh, right here.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tony.
Good council member. So like Easy Fiber is currently out there doing some of this work. Have they paid the previous permit fees, or how are we working through that process with them while they're currently
Yes.
working?
So they have currently 13 different areas where they want to work. They did pay the old permit fee to get started. They are holding back on getting started on the others in anticipation that we could have some flexibility. So they did pay a high fee for their first body of work.
Thank you.
Okay. We have Councilmember Boyce.
Thank you, sir. So the fee, I mean, what's the difference between what we will charge like a Comcast versus a Easy Fiber? Do you know the difference of that?
Well, there wouldn't be a difference, or the difference would be scaled to the impact.
Okay.
So currently, these are about street cuts. So if Comcast wanted to come dig up a street,
Right.
and, do a bunch of damage and have to repair all of that, we would charge them the current fee. But if they came to us and said, we have a new method that will reduce the damage, then we would be able to work with them under this resolution. And in what we would do is bill them hourly. We charge a small fee, a $500 fee for intake of a permit, and then we would charge them hourly for our processing and inspection time, and then bill them for that later. Again, just trying to assess the city time to process to work in with this new technology that they're using to install. So this would be open to anybody, again, per the discretion of the CAO. I mean, if they're using new methods that are where we need a more appropriate fee, then we'd have that flexibility.
So they're doing some of this work in other states, right? Like
Yes.
Easy Fiber?
Yes.
Do we know, I know there's a big difference between us and Texas, but do you know what methodology they're using to go about charging? Have you guys looked into that?
We have, and we just see such a broad range
Yep.
that we decided that it would be appropriate to just see what it takes on our end to recover our own costs. And because, you just have different situations.
Okay, I'm good.
We're kind of taking a scientific approach to getting the number right.
Well, I didn't want to hear you say, but once we get going, you'll come back to the council and then, okay.
Right. Once we process a handful of these permits, we'll know about what our time investment would be, and then we'll just put a number to it.
Okay. Thank you. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Boyce. Matt, those are all some very good questions, but I have a question. You said that this would minimize the city impact so far as to the streets and the sidewalks. What about the impact to the residents, the yards that you might have to dig into to lay these cables?
So, yes, that's certainly an impact, and oftentimes what we'll see is there's city property behind the sidewalk that kind of runs into people's yards, and they've maintained those over the years. And so there will be impacts there. But those require less inspection time. For instance, if you cut into a street and you repair a big patch of that cut street, that takes more energy to design the fix, to go inspect the fix. Same thing with sidewalks. It's just there's more to it because it's more of an engineered surface. So that means the city has to spend more time reviewing how they're going to fix it and inspecting the work. Whereas when there's a hole in someone's yard, that's relatively easy. It's like put it back together and, either put the gravel back or put the lawn back or, fix the planter or whatever that may be. It's just less time on the city's side.
And that would include also, like if people have sprinklers, you'll be connecting the piping, tubings back up and everything, making sure everything works. Okay, making them whole, what I'm thinking, right?
That's right. And that's something we've been working closely with Easy, and they've, no pun intended, they run into that a lot, and it's something that they're experienced with. They work with owners directly as well.
Okay. Well, thank you. So, we got a lot of good answers, a lot of good questions. So does anybody, council member?
I did have one more. So just for clarity, say it was 100-foot long. I know that they go much further, but say it was 100-foot long. Instead of having a long cut for 100 feet, it's going to be a cut at point A and then down at point Z, and not all the way in between, so less damage, less inspection time needed to repair.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember. So with that being said, I move to adopt resolution number 2087, creating an alternative permit fee for some street cuts permits and allowing for the acceptance of in-kind contributions for street cuts permits and alternative street cut permits. And okay, do I hear a motion? I gave the motion, yeah.
Councilmember Troutner did the second.
Oh, okay. So I didn't hear her say second, I'm sorry.
All in favor?
So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the motion has been approved.
Thank you, Councilmember Boyd. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Councilmember. And next up, we have Parks. Councilmember Michaud, please.
Thank you so much, Madam President. We have two items tonight, and first up, we have a contract for park security, and we have Garen Lee here to present. Hello.
All right. Good evening, Council President, council members. In front of you today, we have a contract for security services that's focused on providing nightly lockup of our restrooms and parking lots. I think as noted initially back in 2023, we started contracting for these types of services as part of looking and adapting and adjusting to the needs of managing our parks, particularly in the evenings in this case. Regularly, we take a look at where the needs are in terms of what our high-volume parks are, where folks are gathering, what pressures we're feeling in terms of delivering services. And in this case, we isolated to this particular set of services as being one that would support our evening staff so that they're able to more focus on maintaining and providing the park spaces, and that this type of skill set could be as part of ensuring that they can focus on those areas. Also, as part of this effort, as we have noted, we also installed an additional 6 parking lot gates to provide that tool to manage access and security for those parking lots. And as you can imagine, having additional parking lot gates creates additional amount of time, because it's not just about the locking of the gate, it's also about clearing the parking lot. We do our best not to lock anyone's car in the parking lot after hours, because that certainly creates its own set of circumstances. And so what we have found in the couple of years that we had this in place, or previously had this in place, is that our evening staff in particular appreciate the support they are receiving, allowing them to focus on what their duties are, and we have the additional contractor support to help them go about doing their job.
Are there any questions for Garen? No? Okay, well, that was easy. All right. I move to authorize the mayor to sign the goods and services agreement with PAL American Security Incorporated in the amount of $129,000, subject to final terms and conditions acceptable to the Parks Director and City Attorney.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right, up next, we have Eric Henricks here to talk about some path replacement and repair at the golf course.
Ready? Good afternoon, council members. My name is Eric Henricks, and I'm the golf course manager. I'm here today to seek authorization for golf cart path repairs and replacements at Riverbend Golf Course. This will be the second phase of hopefully a 3 or 4 phase project. Phase 1 was completed in September of 2024. We were able to do 4 holes, some of the poor areas, holes number 12, number 13, number 15, and number 16. Again, that was completed in September of 2024. Phase 2 of that project would be some higher priority areas. After years of wear and tear, it'll obviously improve user safety, drainage. It'll be a visual upgrade. It'll certainly provide additional comfort for our golfers. It will also allow us an opportunity to increase revenue. Holes impacted as of right now would be holes number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and number 18. And with that said, the project will not require any hole closures, which would be great for business. Phase 3 would most likely be in 2026, most likely the summer or fall of 2026. So with that said, do you guys have any questions?
Eric, thank you so much for this presentation. It definitely looks like it's much needed. And the good news is that this is funded from the Golf Fund. Woohoo. All right. Are there any questions? Councilmember Troutner?
Thank you, Councilmember Michaud. So will phase 3 complete then all of the repairs, or is it still, okay?
There are still multiple different areas that would certainly be needed.
Yeah.
Phase 4, possibly, quite frankly, through a possible phase 10.
Yeah.
And obviously for us to undertake 10, 15 phases of this, unfortunately right now, we certainly don't have the funds to do that. So this is, phase 1 was number 1 priority. This would be a second priority just in terms of the higher trafficked areas and so on.
Well, and I hope with this beautiful weather that we are busy this week.
It's extremely busy,
Yeah.
yes.
That's good to hear. Go ahead, Councilmember Boyd.
Thank you. Okay. Can I assume that phase 2 will start in 2025?
Yes.
Okay, all right, good. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I will read the motion. I move to authorize the mayor to sign the contract with AA Asphalting LLC for the golf cart path replacement and repair project, subject to final terms and conditions acceptable to the Parks Director and City Attorney.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Thank you so much. Back to you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilmember Michaud. Next up, we have Public Works. Councilmember Fincher, please.
Thank you, Council President. We are going to hear from David Payne for the 2026 to 2031 TIP, or
Good evening, council members, committee members. David Payne, City Transportation Planner, presenting on the 2026-2031 TIP update. Here we are. Today we're going to present on the schedule, remind folks watching on what the schedule for each year's update is. We're going to speak briefly to the outreach and involvement that we do each year, and then we'll pause to talk about the projects that are being added and removed as complete. So a reminder again, that here's the cycle that we go through each year. Here we are in May for the adoption, and we would have seen y'all most recently in March, just before going to revise the document based on the input that we received. So we do each year, the cycle, the process that we follow is we build on the plans adopted by the city. That includes our comprehensive plan. We can also pull projects from the local road safety plan. We include projects that are major projects that are being done by other agencies within our jurisdiction to help raise awareness of those projects, including if we are participating in those projects, like some of the larger WashDOT projects. And we also reach out to our partners to discuss which projects should be added. So we've got representation from Kent School District, Bicycle Advisory Board. We give presentations to the Land Use Planning Board. We're constantly working with King County Metro, and we also check in with the Puget Sound Regional Fire Authority to make sure that we're touching all the bases. The list on the left includes the different meetings, presentations we've gone through over the course of the year. And then the exhibit on the right shows both the outreach materials that we have on display, both at Kent Commons and online via the engage.kentwa.gov website, along with our interactive web map that we use each year. We also want to pause before we get into the projects that we're adding and talk about the projects that we've completed in the last year. So there are 5 notable projects, and I'll go through each of them in turn. So the first is the 132nd Avenue Southeast Pedestrian Improvement Phase 4 project, which included repavement of the roads, adding extruded curbs, some reflectors to add and complete a walking path along 132nd. You can see a bunch of smiling folks you may recognize on the picture on the right. The second project is the East Valley Highway Preservation project between 212th and 192nd, or 196th, apologies. The third project was a compact roundabout at 108th Southeast and Southeast 264th Street. You can see in illustration number 3. Project number 4 was partly in conjunction with that safety project, were a number of road diets along Smith and 4th Avenue. And lastly, we're closing out the project on 104th Avenue Southeast, an RRFB enhanced crosswalk, which you can see there in the lower right-hand corner with Mount Rainier peeking out just above the trees there on a beautiful day. So these projects represent approximately $4.7 million worth in grants. You see little asterisks beside each of the projects this year. And local funds of approximately $2.7 million. So that's 4.7 in grants and 2.7 in local funds. So for some quick math, that's 7.4 million in total delivery for this year. It's about average for our transportation section. Now revisiting the projects that we're recommending be added this year to the TIP. There are 6 projects. This is the summary slide, so I'll touch briefly on each of these in the next couple of slides. But this gives an overview of where they are across the city. There are approximately 4 safety projects or planning projects. Those are highlighted in orange. 1, 2, 5, and 6. And then we've got 2 projects that are multimodal, complete the street type projects for multimodal elements. And those are highlighted in green. Those are projects 3 and 4. The first project, as mentioned in March, is our Kent BNSF Railway Corridor Crossing Safety Study. So this is a project in partnership with BNSF, Sound Transit, and Amtrak, administered by the Federal Railroad Administration, that will be looking into needs assessment, engagement with the public, and assessing alternatives for what to do next, or what comes next, or what should come next for the 8 crossings in downtown Kent, shown on the map on the left. And we've had our first scoping meeting / process orientation meeting with FRA, and we're very excited to see that project come to bear. But nothing moves quickly right now. We'll just leave it at that. But we're excited to keep it moving forward. 2 safety projects on Pacific Highway. These are a pedestrian hybrid beacon between 244th and 246th. It's going to be right at the intersection with 246th there in the middle image. And then the second project is the pedestrian hybrid beacon at the 25,000th block, roughly parallel to the South 250th Street you see in the lower left-hand image. These are both projects that the council has already accepted grant awards for. And they are already in design, but in order to be compliant and to be in sync with Growth Management Act, we're adding them to the TIP. And then 2 additional multimodal connection projects. The first is up in the upper left-hand quadrant. We've got the Reith Road project, which will extend the improvements that have recently been done on 259th Place up to Military, between 38th Avenue and Military, on the north side, presumably, of the roadway corridor. So we would be needing to seek grant funds to bring this to bear, but adding it to the TIP is what will allow us to qualify and be able to compete for some of those projects, or for funds for this project. And then the project on the list for recommendation for being added this year was recently or previously referred to as a sidewalk gap project. We now have a technical analysis to recommend which segment of roadway Using the criteria on the left, each of those was weighted equally: safety, equity, connections, and input from the public. And we've identified the Military Road south walking path between South 272nd Street to 264th, and would include an enhanced crosswalk at 268th, right there by the park. So what you'll see in the tip includes full section reconstruction, which is quite something. But we'll be also seeking grants to potentially implement improvements along that section of roadway. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. The next time you'll see us will be for a public hearing, with permission, for the public hearing at City Council on May 20th, in just 2 weeks.
All right. Councilmember Fincher? I have a question.
Any questions from anyone? Council member or Council President?
Thank you, Councilmember Fincher. Thank you, David. Question is actually about funding. Are we anticipating, I guess, or do we have an idea of any impacts to transportation funding this year, or any grants, or there's going to be, I guess, decrease in our progress? Sort of a more...
Well, what we can say is we're going to continue apace with all of the projects. They're all equally important. And what I would say is a little bit of optimism for Washington State. A number of our resources that we have available, both regionally and at the state, are going to continue to be available. So there's no change to that. And then we're all in the same bucket in terms of what's coming from the federal level. We don't see any signs of that changing necessarily in the near term, but it's a Tuesday, so it could change.
Friday.
Change in the coming weeks. But I think there's reason for optimism is that we continue to deliver projects at the city. We continue to work with our partners. We continue to be nimble. One of the projects that the East Valley Highway project that I noted that we completed this last year was able to move up in the delivery schedule because we were ready to be able to deliver it. So we'll just continue plucking along and taking care that we can.
Thank you. Thank you, and I appreciate all the grants you're able to bring in, so that's it.
Okay, so for the Transportation Master Plan, you remind me, or you might have to check into it, further up Military, so continuing down, are there plans, or is it in the plan to continue sidewalks and walking paths on the other end also? So heading up to Military, and then Military continuing north up through, say, by the church, up through the shopping center.
So what I would say is that most sidewalks are in the Transportation Master Plan programmatically. They're in the comp plan programmatically. So they're not necessarily identified as a specific project the way that we are identifying the project now, based on the analysis and the opportunities, the safety analysis that we've done as part of the Target Zero Action Plan, that it's starting to rise to that level. In the TMP, the only named project along that section, I believe, and I'm going to hurt myself for trying to think this off the top of my head, is the RRFB crossing for the park. That being said, this would be the priority. We would recommend it be the priority for this project now. But when the analysis that we were looking at, it stops about 2,000 feet north of 272nd. So that's why we're recommending this particular section be added this year as a priority so that we can continue to pursue those grant opportunities.
Thank you. That was the only item we had today.
Thank you, Councilmember Fincher. Thank you, David. And with that, we are adjourned until 5:15 for council workshop. Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome to Kent City Council Workshop for Tuesday, May 6th. We have 2 items on our agenda, and they're both Kristen show today. So we have Housing Code Update and Rediscover Downtown, and I'll let you go ahead and get started with that.
Great. Thank you so much, Council. It's good to be here. You may notice that there's a face on a screen. Soon this will not be the Kristen show. This will be the Kristen and Caroline and Deja show. So you all have met Deja. She's been on our team for about 4 or 5 months now. Caroline is filling the vacant principal planner position that was vacated about a year ago by Kayleen. So we are really excited. We did a search, and then we said we don't feel like we have the right candidate, so we did another search, and she was actually referred to us by another employee in Kent who said, you know, I know this woman that's in Texas, but she's been in the UW arena. She's been on the West Coast. She's back in Texas right now. Maybe she'd be interested. And the timing just worked perfectly. So Caroline, this is Caroline Eckel. She will be joining us officially as staff in the middle of June. Right now, she is on a temp contract because she's out of state, but we're bringing her up to speed on all the projects. And eventually, she will be the main point of contact for the downtown plan. So she is, I think, well, 2 days in officially, but she wanted to join today to listen in. So just wanted you to see her face because you'll see the name start popping up over the next month, and then she'll be here before we know it. So Caroline, you don't need to keep your screen on. I don't want you to feel like you're being watched. We're going to move on to presentations, but I did just want to, again, we're so excited for you to be here and wanted to introduce you to our council.
I say welcome.
Thank you. Thrilled to hear. Very excited to meet everyone in person in June.
All right, look forward to it.
All right, so that was the main show. The rest of this is just kind of icing and gravy on other work we're doing. We're going to be talking about our Recode Kent project, which is our housing code update. Tonight we have 3 things before you. One is just updating you on the project schedule and the wrap up of the legislative session. Second is we took your words to heart on significant trees. We've done some research on it and have a staff proposal of what that can mean for the phase 1 of incentivizing retaining significant trees. And then the third part, there's really not much you all get a choice to weigh in on STEP housing, which is that temporary emergency supportive housing. And that's because the state has decided a lot, but there are a couple things I wanted to make you aware of, and then also propose a little bit that where you do have wiggle room on that. So those are the topics we'll discuss tonight. You can see we are at May 6th. So this little star is getting closer and closer. We are going to be releasing the draft code updates this week and notifying Commerce, doing kind of the whole big, this is now finally public. We've been talking about concepts, but here it is in writing. And then we will be working with Land Use and Planning Board and you all through May and June for that adoption process. So there's 7 new state code requirements. I think I grabbed the one on. No, I'm good. Okay, there's 7 new state bills that need to be adopted by June. There's one that we did decide to put on hold. It's co-living housing. We already have something similar, but not entirely the same. That isn't due to be updated until December 2025 is the regulatory deadline. So we decided for the time being, we're going to put that one on hold because we won't be out of compliance, just to get the rest of this bulk of this work done. So it will be coming. We're not forgetting about it. In the meantime, over the last 6 months, the state legislature has been really busy, and there's over a dozen bills. These are the ones that are most pertinent to land use and planning and housing, but there's over a dozen bills that are either signed by the governor or waiting on the governor's signature for further implementation, and those deadlines are anywhere from 3 months to 18 months after adoption or after the legislative session ends. So we're continuing to track. We have decided, because there were too many moving pieces, you will not see the new state legislation from the 2025 leg session in the language that comes before you for the draft ordinance. I think we all would probably be just spinning and pulling our hair out trying to get to that point of rectifying different code languages at this point. And so we made that decision that a lot of times Commerce will take several months to give guidance on it and other efforts. So we're just going to wait and see how that settles before we work on implementation. A reminder, we are doing a zoning consolidation. You may also remember that we do a docket process, so we are actively working on that as well. So as we were doing the zoning consolidation and looking at our future land use map, we did a little bit of guessing on the future land use map and the comp plan of what we thought the appropriate implementing zones are. And once we looked at really by the uses, by what's allowed, there's a couple areas that we just need to make minor text adjustments because of the way we thought we were going to group duplex zones in multifamily zones, and then we said, you know what, they actually make more sense to be in this other zone. So there's just some minor adjustments. I want you all to be aware of that. It's not anything drastic, but I want you to be aware that it's kind of a refining now that we know where we are with the zoning. So, significant tree retention incentives. So, you may remember last time we talked about how can we incentivize retaining existing homes, and then another priority was retaining significant trees. And so we came up with the strategy that will allow 3 full stories and 35 feet height, which is our existing height, if one of those two are retained. That led staff to say, so what does retaining a significant tree mean? Because we do not have a definition of that in our city code. And so we have different, throughout our landscaping code and other things, we note what different tree diameters are, but we don't necessarily have a definition. And so some of this is a little bit of a policy question to you all of what do you think it means to be a significant tree, and then how many is it worth? So I'm going to give you I'm not an arborist, but I'm going to give you a quick tree analysis 101. Normally, when we talk about retaining trees, we talk about the size of the tree, and we talk about it at DBH, which is the diameter at breast height, which is 4.5 feet. I don't know who came up with this, but that's what they decided. That's a standard industry metric. I don't know if you all have had math classes recently. I always have to remind myself what's diameter versus what's circumference. Diameter would be if you're cutting through the globe. Circumference is if you're going around. So when we're thinking of a tree, it's looking at it point to point across instead of measuring like you would measure your waist potentially. So when we talk about diameter, the circumference is actually going to be larger than the diameter. So sometimes you'll see people say, we preserve like 30-inch circumference trees. That's really, if you remember 3 pi squared, like that's really 10 inches diameter. So we did a lot of research this week. Shout out to Deja for informing this. And it looks like most cities that have landmark or significant trees, really they set it at 24 inches of diameter breast height. So if you think about that, that's about 2 feet across. It is, some jurisdictions did 26 inches, some did 18. The majority were at 24, and so our recommendation is to, as a starting point, let's use 24 inches diameter breast height. And then the question is, how many trees do we want? And this was a little bit more complicated than saying, like, well, they need to retain 5 or 100%, because a lot of sites may just have 1 significant tree, and we want to try to preserve that. If a site has 3 or 4, that's also great, but they also may be right in the middle of where housing could be located, and it could be blocking it. So we didn't want it to create a barrier as well. And so our recommendation is start with applying the incentive for that extra height by preserving 1 tree on site that's 24 inches at DBH. And then we'll evaluate for this first 6 months, see what's happening, what's coming in, and we can come back to you all with recommendations of should we apply this as a percentage, should we apply it to different types of trees, how should that apply? So that's our first conversation point tonight is, does this meet council's goals of tree preservation? Are there other recommendations that, you know, would you like to see this bumped up? The height only applies if it's 3 trees or a different number or a different dimension.
Yeah, that question.
Councilmember Troutner, followed by Councilmember Michaud, Councilmember Boyce.
Thank you, Madam President. I like this idea. I think, you know, looking at what other jurisdictions are doing, I think is fair, but then I think evaluating it is probably the right way to go. But I'm okay with this.
Thank you, Council President. Do we have like the chart for showing the jurisdictions and the size of the tree? 24 feels really big to me. but I don't know like off the top of my head.
Yeah, so I can read off jurisdictions and then I don't have a chart on like in my back pocket. Kirkland was 26 inches, Bellevue 24. Burien had 30 as their largest, but they had a variety of sizes as well. Renton was 24, Puyallup was 15, and Seattle was 24.
Okay.
So we could lower that number if you think a potentially smaller tree would still be worthwhile for preserving and then incentivizing the housing.
Yeah, I don't know without looking into it. That feels really big. That's like 2 pieces of paper stuck like that's probably about 24. That seems really big. Okay. Thanks.
Councilmember Boyce, please.
Thank you, Madam President. So, just to make sure I understand, so we got a big lot,
Yep.
right, that you want to put houses on, right? So, and they have existing big trees that falls in that category, right?
In the middle.
Or
Maybe. Not all lots have big trees. So this is the phase one of the goal is to start to incentivize preserving trees and by adding additional height. But it's at this point, we don't have sufficient time to do much more of analysis of really right-sizing, figuring it out. So it was a first pass staff effort of saying, what could we start at for sizes and opportunities? But there could be lots that have no significant trees on them.
okay, stop my logic. I'll leave it like that for now. Okay, I'm good.
I don't mean to stump you. I am happy to entertain.
All right, no, I'm okay. I'm good.
Thank you, Council President. I would like 18. I'm just going by 8.5 by 11 paper. So a tree would have to be bigger than this, probably about that big end to end.
At breast height, yeah.
And we're talking the circumference, not the diameter.
No,
Or we are talking the diameter. So straight across, I think that we could do better than that. I would like to see more like 18.
This would be closer to 18 versus this. Okay.
She just won.
Any other questions, comments?
No, 18 is good for.
Okay. Any other feedback? Councilmember Shaw?
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with 18. 24 feels really big.
All right.
Well, and I also think that we can agree that we evaluate this within the first 6 months just to kind of see what's coming our way.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think it's one of those things that we'll see if it's even an incentive that's being used, and that may tell us something as well.
But if we do lower the size, then there's more opportunity to use this.
True.
Any other feedback? We're good? Okay, we're good.
Do you have enough direction?
I'm sensing that 18 inches, one tree, and then we will keep the door open for evaluation. We've already talked about adding on some additional landscaping requirements outside of preserving for middle housing to come in as well. So that'll be, I think, phase 2. That looks okay.
Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you. All right, last topic for tonight is STEP housing. So STEP is the acronym that some consultant at Commerce hired came up with for emergency shelters, transitional housing, emergency housing, and permanent supportive housing. So this does not flow in order of what you would think of someone who may be at risk of being unsheltered or is unsheltered and how they flow through a support process. Typically what would happen is someone would enter and they would be in an emergency shelter, which is normally a very short-term duration. They can even be day-use sites. They're not necessarily overnight sites. And then if we were to progress into full independent living, it would be an emergency housing facility. Normally those are about 90 days for stabilization. And then we get into transitional housing and permanent supportive housing. And so for transitional housing, that's normally filling the 90 to 2 year time frame. There's typically a lot of supportive services that accompany that housing. The person may or may not have a lease in order to live in that housing. They could just be a resident without a lease. And then permanent supportive housing is really, it has additional support as well, and additional supports, but it also has leases attached to that type of housing. So when we think of the housing, when Commerce is implementing the state law and what the state law was doing, it really was finding the states saying, we want to see this full spectrum of housing for jurisdictions. And a big part of it is the emergency housing and the emergency shelters. Specifically, they're talking about indoor shelters. So with our consultants, we did a code audit on our code update. We've made some marginal code updates throughout the years, and then Commerce came out with additional guidance, and the state has come out with additional tweaks. And so the first thing is our definitions don't have a one-to-one match with STEP housing, and so that causes some confusion. And so making sure that we're, for the sake of staff and those that are seeking to provide that type of housing, that we have clarification and definitions and alignment. Another thing is emergency housing and emergency shelters must be allowed in all zones where hotels are allowed. We're going to talk about that one in a minute. And then we have what we affectionately call footnotes 31 and 35, but this is where the requirements for emergency housing and emergency shelters are housed. There's a lot of requirements in those sections that relate to spacing, occupancy, and intensity. Some of those are allowed if we make direct links to health and safety. There's some other ones that the state has flagged and said these might not meet the intent if we don't find appropriate justifications for them and make those findings in our ordinance. So those are the main parts. The final part is permanent supportive housing and transitional housing. Those cannot be treated by state law any differently than any other type of housing that we allow. And they must be allowed in all zones where housing or hotels are located. And this is interesting because sometimes we allow hotels but not housing. So it really is a very expansive process. So this is our current use table. I highlighted, because this table is many, many pages long, I highlighted just the ones that are really pertinent to the discussion, which you can see on the top two lines are our hotels and residential uses. I simplified residential so that you can see, because the state doesn't differentiate between whether it's single family or multifamily. It says anywhere where residences are allowed. So again, those indoor emergency housing and indoor emergency shelters must be allowed in any zone where hotels are allowed. So we can do that comparison, and I'll highlight it in a minute. And then transitional housing is where both hotels or housing are allowed. So that is that expansive one. So when we're looking at those first two, which are really the entry level for someone emerging out of being unsheltered or at risk of being unsheltered, sorry, those are in opposite order. When we look at that, we see right now we're currently actually more permissive in some of our lower density zones than what is required. So this section over, we must be allowing the uses. We've done a survey, and there's only one facility right now in the city that meets, that is within those zones. And so we are proposing, because the state is limiting a lot of our other authority to regulate these facilities, that we limit them into the zones that are the most intense, with that align with what the state requirements are. And so the existing facility would be allowed to continue. It would be considered a legal non-conforming use. It allows them to continue operating. It would just prevent further siting in the lower density areas, since we don't have the controls that our old code would have had to add additional stipulations around them.
What's the P and the C? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. C means conditional use permit required. So they submit to the department. There's a hearing by the hearing examiner, and he makes the decision. P means permitted outright. Because, and this is the second part, you're jumping to my lead, because we can't treat transitional housing different than any other residential use, we can't require a conditional use permit for that transitional housing, because we don't require conditional use permits for other types of housing.
Okay.
So this is a little bit of, again, Kent went ahead and said, we're going to allow outright, without hearings, these types of housing in a good effort. And then the state said, well, if you were to require conditional uses, then you could apply it to all these other uses. But since you've already decided that multifamily housing should be permitted outright, you can't retroactively do that. So this is, the proposal is, our hands are tied in many ways, but this is changing the use table in a way that we wanted you all to be aware of. And then our final changes.
Councilmember Fincher has a question, Kristen.
Yeah, I had a question, just so I was clear, what is the one facility and which area did that fall into?
It's in the MRD zone right now, and it's up on Canyon.
Okay.
That's a grandfathered in is a term to use.
Thank you.
Or vested.
Okay. Am I thinking of the one like off-white colored? Okay.
So that's change one is to the use table. The second part is the code changes, just more generally that you'll see in those mostly either the definitions or the footnotes. So removing limitations. Right now we have a limitation that they can only be co-located with religious institutions, and that's something that is likely. It's strongly ill-advised, is how I will say it. And so the way we have written our code, currently we are proposing to remove that there must be a co-location with a religious institution. There's other state laws that address if a facility is located with a religious institution. I think that was probably what was intended to cover two ordinances, but the state has since separated those bills. So we'll be removing the requirement for co-location. And then we currently have a 90 days on, 90 days off operating system. And we've heard strongly that is very difficult for facilities to use to operate. And so that is something that will also likely be removed. The next part, removing permanent supportive housing from group homes, we have, go ahead.
Councilmember Boyd?
Yes, Kristen, I got a question. Down where you had the transitional housing, these numbers in parentheses, these 29s, what does that mean, the 29?
I'm sorry, those are footnotes related to requirements for them. We're also evaluating those. It basically, right now, there's footnotes for a variety of reasons. So for some of the zones, we say housing is only allowed in certain instances, and so we can move that forward. But if it's restricting based on a way that we wouldn't treat multifamily, we're going to have to remove those footnotes potentially.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So number two, we have an old vestige of code. Again, I think some of this is just historic. No one saw a need to clean it up at a certain point and it wasn't causing problems issue. And so we have an old piece of code that says permanent supportive housing in our lower density zones is classified as a group home. And they are two very distinct types of housing. And so removing that, we already did it for our multifamily and permanent supportive housing to separate them. The code cleanup is really just separating them from those requirements. And then updating, we just discussed, Councilmember Boyd highlighted, you're an A student, some of the transitional housing review that we will be doing, and then aligning those definitions. One thing that is, I think, really important that we do as a city retain is the ability to require health, food, clothing, and personal hygiene needs met with on the site and in the building. And so that's something that Commerce was really clear on, of needing to exit buildings can be problematic. There's reasons why it may be useful, but in order to meet the definition of indoor shelter and emergency housing, we need to have them all within that same building. And so again, we have requirements to meet housing needs as well, and so it has to be within that in order to meet the housing needs.
Excuse me, Kristen, so for clothing, are you talking about providing clothing, being able to do laundry for the clothing? What would clothing mean in there?
Yeah, not necessarily being able to provide clothing to people, but amenities so that people can have clean clothing. So typically it's washers or dryers or proximity to it. Any feedback on that before I tell you where we're going next?
quick, so for us, work-wise, I mean, how much work we have to do on your end to kind of align with these changes? Is it?
I'm standing up. No, I will say we have an amazing consultant team. Deja was transitioning from her current planning to her long-range planning position. I was at a conference 2 weeks ago, and every planner there was just exhausted. I think it's been a significant lift, and we're not unique in that instance. It's a significant lift, and 6 months is quite short when you think that we were sprinting to get the comp plan done. And so we were waiting for Commerce to come out with guidance for some of these 7 laws. They just finished their guidance, and we have 2 or 3 months left. So it's been a significant lift. There's been a little bit of funding, but really not sufficient to cover the full costs.
Were you on the east side of the mountain?
I was.
Yeah. I was at that same location.
Oh, it's a great location.
Yeah.
Any feedback on the step housing?
I did have a question. So someone comes, I'm at my other job. Someone comes to my door today looking for housing. I call around. There's no place to put them. I call all of our neighboring cities. Is there anything here that is going to help me? I'm looking mainly at the transitional and the emergency. That would allow something to be set up where I could call over and get that person into some place tonight or tomorrow.
So these are land use code updates.
Right.
So those facilities would be permitted in the city. My understanding, and this is speaking with service providers, is there are some jurisdictions that have legitimate land use challenges. We did a capacity analysis, and we were more than 1.5 times able to accommodate the land use. The challenges a lot of times are on the fundings and the programs and the staffing to stand up those programs. So I can't, as a land use code person, I can say we have land use and capacity under this, and we are furthering the state's requiring us to even further reduce regulations from when we did that analysis. So we will be opening up more land in Kent. But I can't guarantee that someone's going to have a facility built.
Yeah.
So we've had issues in the past where there was not. But you're saying with the new changes that we're looking at all, there would be additional, we don't know what those would be, but there are additional opportunities that someone could come in.
Before any of these changes, we had about 1.5 times the capacity of what was needed. We will not be restricting that in the sense of what the state's requiring will be more permissive.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we are on track. We're releasing this draft code. We're sending it to all of the people that need to see it, the state, other people. So we will be meeting with the local builders and Master Builders Association to talk with them, especially on the middle housing part, to see if there's things that we unintentionally are throwing in that are challenging that we didn't mean to do. And then that all is coming up in this next week. And then May and June starts the adoption process, and we'll be following up. Again, this is a really tight timeline we have before the end of the month to act on it, or before the end of June to act on it. And so we'll be following up more in the next meeting.
Based on your expertise, right? So, I mean, I know you haven't had this meeting with the developer, but just kind of, do you have a gut feeling, just what that thought process may be about all this here? Or?
So we have done a lot of conversations with builders and developers to understand what types of products that they're hearing the market wants.
Right.
So I think generally we're also looking at opportunities. This is phase 1 of many. So the first phase is like meet the state requirements because we need to, but we're working to shape this to also meet some of the requirements that are in the comprehensive, not the requirements, the goals and policies and vision we put forward in the comprehensive plan. Smaller scale infill development opportunities rather than massive buy-ups and knocking down all of the existing naturally occurring affordable housing. Some of those things we're really working to infuse in this first part. So I think based on our conversations, I mean, we'll see what they have to say once they see our code. But there's been a lot of, they sent us a letter saying, here's what we would like to see. And we either have already been working on that or it was part of this first phase. So I think they would always like more. And I think that's the opportunity in phase 2, because there's a lot of opportunities to talk about infill design and other things about how do we really see those smaller infill projects versus the large scale development come in and incentivize that.
And we'll probably see more of these on the south side versus the east side, these types of construction.
I think we'll see them on large lots.
Okay.
And we have large lots kind of dispersed throughout a lot of the city. So.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? None?
Okay. I'm sorry, Kim. All right, rediscover downtown. So in the midst of all the requirements, we also have a PSRC centers recertification process that we're doing right now for our downtown plan. So I'm going to talk about progress to date, a little bit more details. I hinted that we did a granular assessment. I'm going to show you that, and then talk about upcoming engagement and where our milestones are. So as a reminder, the big thing that we're aiming for is recertification with PSRC. So there's several requirements. The activity unit requirements, which is the mix of housing and job density, the minimum that we have to have currently is 18, and we're at 23. So we meet that minimum threshold. We already have planned additional density to meet that next threshold. And there's not an exact timeline on it. It's saying that you put the land use in place because we don't necessarily control all of the market conditions. But I want to go down a little bit. We meet a lot of the other requirements in terms of the size of the center and having connections to transit. We do need to demonstrate evidence of future market potential, as well as our evidence of our regional role. And so part of the plan is also capturing a lot of the efforts that we have done through our planning efforts, through collaboration, through I'm thinking of like the Willis Roundabout and some other projects that we've said we are laying the foundation for development and new development to come in and to be part of the vision of Kent's future. So we talked about these last time. The project goals are really, we narrowed them down into saying there's a lot of things that this plan can be. There's a lot of things we want to really focus on making sure that we are aligning with realistic expectations and market conditions, but also identifying things that we can do that are short-term but higher impact. And if they can be lower cost, that would be great as well. But a lot of this is looking at how we put parks and public works and ECD and all of our best and brightest thinkers in the city with also our best and brightest police officers and other departments that are more on the ground, maintenance workers, working with all of them to think through where are the opportunities in the city. So our project progress to date, this is a list of the engagement we've done. We started really early with the comp plan and did a lot of co-listening, co-meeting sessions, did joint outreach for cornucopia days. We had the downtown as one part of the booth and the comp plan as the other half of the booth. And then we kind of hit a point where we said, we need to get the comprehensive plan done and we need to make sure that we meet that first threshold requirement. So we picked back up in February. We've been continually meeting with KDP. They have a subgroup that's also weighing in heavily on this. And then we've been meeting with our staff teams, and then we went to 2 different career days to talk with students about downtown. Some of our findings are downtown should be a cultural heart of the city of Kent. So that recognition of it is really not just physically the middle of a gathering place, but that there's a lot of momentum and opportunity in this area to leverage. Prioritizing third places, public community gathering spaces. So as we continue to densify, there's broad recognition that downtown will have more residential development coming, and it will be more intense than detached single-family homes. It'll likely be similar to what we've seen along Meeker and in downtown already. And so the importance of these other places for community gatherings are really important. And then enhancing the pedestrian experience. So we actually have, and I'm going to talk about this in a minute, we actually have a lot of sidewalks in downtown. It's a very dense sidewalk area, but the feeling on the street overall, sometimes the mental picture of crossing a large street can be very daunting and cause a barrier for people traveling within different parts of our downtown and limits that pedestrian experience. So prioritizing a multi-pronged approach to address safety. Safety is something that unfortunately is not unique, fortunately or unfortunately, I'm not sure how to say that. Safety is a concern in many areas, and our consultants have said, and I've talked with other planners, like safety comes up almost always when you talk about a downtown area. And so this is a combination approach. We've brought in the Kent Police Department to also talk to us about what they're seeing and how we can combine and leverage efforts and policies going forward. Promoting downtown as a business and development friendly place was something, I think this aligns a lot with our economic development group's already ongoing efforts. But I will say too, Bill and I are exploring what are the incentives that we haven't turned over, figured out how we can make useful in our downtown as well. And then parking is another common one that we hear a lot about. This one, I think I mentioned it last time, is we have a lot of spaces per residence and retail square footage, but it's not necessarily easy to access. And so it may be further away than someone feels comfortable walking. It may be tucked into or behind a building that someone doesn't know that they can access it and it's public. It could be down a street that feels unsafe to walk to, and someone just, no matter how much you do right now because of safety concerns, they're not going to use it. And so that is something of thinking of various parking strategies and programs is an opportunity as well. So we've done a granular assessment, and we'll be sharing this with KDP later this month. What is a granular assessment? It basically looks, I like to think of it as projectors that have the transparency. So it lays different things on top of downtown for data points, and you can see them as it relates to, there's some really great things happening, or there's some areas that just kind of pop out on the map when you put different layers on that you say, wow, there's nothing happening in this area, or there's a lot of opportunity or underutilized land in this area. And so it's basically a series of maps that we use to cross-analyze a variety of different things. It looks, I mean, this is saying pedestrian and bicycle experience. It also looks at economic development opportunities, housing opportunities, access to service providers, business opportunities, and places that draw people in for recreational purposes. So a couple snapshots of what that looks like. This is a map of our vacant and underutilized land in downtown. And so the pink is vacant and the purple is underutilized. Doesn't mean we don't necessarily have plans for it or there's not ideas, but right now as it's sitting, a large portion of our downtown is not really functioning as an active place for people to either go or spend time or productively contribute to the local economy. And so that was something that I think probably isn't a surprise if you've walked around downtown. Bill Ellis has a lot of interesting commentary on this and some of the challenges with it. And so we'll be looking, and we're talking with our sub-consultants about some of the economic realities of why it's popular for this land to remain vacant or underutilized. Multimodal connectivity. So you can see through this map, there's a lot of sidewalks shown in the bolded lines and then our crosswalks. Also opportunity for some stronger connections, especially on some of our larger roads. And so some of that would be potentially right-of-way conversations that we can have. I think Meet Me on Meeker is a project that we've heard a lot from the community that they like what they've seen in that development. They like the wider sidewalks, they like the lighting. There's opportunity to think through, could Central, could other streets potentially be a similar process where we could have one enhanced experience for people that are using cars as well as other modes of transportation. But then two, I think coming from East Hill or coming from north down into downtown from 167, there's a lot of visual barriers sometimes of not knowing what's beyond some of those main streets that you drive into. And so when you overlay that, I'm going to go back for a minute, with some of our vacant land, it starts to tell an interesting picture of where there may be opportunities. This is Kristen speaking off the cuff, so Kurt may fire me, we'll see. But I think one of the things that we've talked about too in downtown is there's a lot of opportunity, but there's a lot of different parts of downtown. And so part of the purpose of this plan is to come up with a strategy of where should we focus our efforts so that we're not doing a little bit of sparkles everywhere and not feeling that impact in a way that our businesses and the residents and people that want to visit feel the tangible change. And so that's a tough conversation, but I think it's something that we're leading towards of how do we address this. So we did this staff granular workshop assessment. We had 2 different tables, and it was really interesting. They came out at this, they arrived at very similar conclusions for some things. So the Naden property and the trail that I can't think of the name of, the interurban trail. A lot of those were seen as assets and opportunities. And then there were also a lot of conversations about what would it look like to have some dedicated programming? What would it look like to have some intentional efforts, especially along Central and then along James, as those 2 areas seem to have a lot of disconnect and barriers. And so different conversations, nothing has been decided. We are going to start floating this. We're going to meet with KDP to see what they see when they see these granular assessments. And then we will be going out into the public to talk with them about it. So upcoming engagement, we have a variety of efforts just in time for Caroline's arrival. We will be at the Kent International Festival. I believe I've been here 3 years, and I will have been at the festival all 3 years. It's one that we really enjoy going to, and we're starting to see familiar faces again and again. Well, 2 years in a row. And then we're reaching out. We're wanting to meet with multifamily properties that are within downtown or next to downtown. So thinking about doing like popsicles with planners or an ice cream party to gather some information from the residents, get them involved and have a vision in this project as well, and then also working with a variety of locations throughout downtown. We will be doing online surveys, so that is something we're calling it Choose Your Own Adventure, but basically pick different parts of downtown, and you can we kind of have a guided walk that you could go through and say, okay, as you're going through this part, tell us about different things, and questions will pop up. And then we'll have additional focus group conversations. There's some developers that have said, I've tried to develop in Kent and it hasn't worked. And a lot of times the answer is because the financing doesn't work, not because city code. But we want to really think about that in our pro forma and see, again, if there's ways we can nudge it in any way for the incentives. And then ongoing meetings with KDP. We also are going to have an advisory group series over the next couple months. We'll have 4 meetings. It'll be kicking off in May, and I'll send you more information about that. So, project milestones, that market analysis and pro forma does 2 things. One, it meets our PSRC requirements to demonstrate we are of regional importance and we're significant, but it also helps us figure out where are the gaps and what's within our city opportunity versus waiting for the market, waiting for interest rates or other things that may be outside of our control. We'll have engagement findings that we're reporting back after our May, June, July efforts, and then we'll have our draft goals and policies and the draft plan in July and August. We're aiming for September for our recertification. That is, PSRC wants everything by, they originally told us fall, and then they said, no, it needs to be May this year. So they're granting us you can come in a little bit late and not jeopardize anything. So we really are on track for that September deadline.
Councilmember Troutner.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you so much, Kristen, for both of these presentations. As far as the PSRC meeting this criteria, do we need it to get grants, or does it help us meet certain, does it give us more consideration?
So the comprehensive plan is required in order to even qualify to get in the door to say that you're allowed to submit. So congratulations to you all. Last month, we did have our plan certified by PSRC. Some of our colleagues got letters saying you can't even consider applying for grants this year. So that's the first step. The second part is competitiveness and ability to accept grants. And so because we have PSRC's ranking looks at whether you have a regional growth center and whether the projects are serving that area. And so there's different scoring criteria for it, but it does help with that. And then I would be remiss to say, if I didn't say, our public works team really is a rock star in accepting funds that other parts of the region can't. And because we have the capabilities, because we have the plans, it's more likely that we're able to add some points on to be in that redistribution shuffle.
Any other questions or comments? None? Looks like, Kristen, you did a great job explaining everything, and we all understood it, so time for a pop quiz, but I'll do that at the next meeting. But it doesn't look like there's any other questions or comments.
When you see yourself coming back after all of your the meetings you outlined, and you'll come back to us, or what's the next step?
For a downtown plan?
Yeah.
So we will likely not see you again until early, like summertime, so late June probably. Partially one, because we're going to be focusing a lot on middle housing and bringing that before you. And just, you all are a busy group, and we want to make sure we have enough information that's new to bring back to you. So I'd say late June, early July is probably the next time.
Okay.
All right. I think that was a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
If there's nothing else, we are adjourned.